So, I invite you on this journey with me to conquer Spanish in 2021 as I plan on visiting places like Mexico City, Medellin, Tulum, and so on in the coming months. So what I've done is source my knowledge from no BS sources like Tim Ferriss, Fluent 3 Months blog by Benny, Fluent Forever book by Gabriel Weiner, among others. The plan is simple, to get conversational Spanish in 2 months. Any steps should be applicable to any language because I want to learn Portuguese as well. Now, if you want to learn another language or channel the gringo energy, or be immersed in another culture by learning some foreign conversation basics, well, this video is for you. So without further ado, let's dive in. Número uno, understanding the language sound and structure. So sourcing all blogs and books together, this is the first step a lot of the people recommend. And basically in this step, you want to understand the sound and the structure of a foreign language as it compares to your native tongue. So spend a few hours by yourself or with a tutor in this step. Don't dive into the grammar, but just get the basics. So for instance, in Spanish, conjugations are the biggest difference I see when compared to an English language, right? So a sentence like, I'm a white boy that doesn't speak Spanish or have good manners. So in Spanish, you'd say, soy gringo. The word soy is a combination of the word ser and yo. So ser is to be and yo is I. In Spanish, you conjugate the verb ser into soy so that you know that we're talking about I. Now, hopefully you have a more interesting life than me to come up with a more creative example, but I think you get the point. And there are other things in Spanish language, like the double question marks on either side of the sentence. And there are other things in Spanish, like the way you pronounce things. So for example, the word llego, which is actually 2 L's, but you pronounce it as like ye, like Y, llego. And then another word would be like hola, which is spelled out hola, H-O-L-L-A. But you would say hola, so the H is silent. So if you're an English speaker, Spanish is actually quite easy to pronounce, but for other languages, this is a very important step because, for example, Mandarin or Turkish is quite different from English. So for Spanish, I take this step seriously, but don't spend too much time on it. Now on to número dos, which is the vocabulary. For this step, you want to get the 600 to 800 most common words that you're going to use in the Spanish language. And you should focus on the simple present tense. So for example, if you were to learn the sentence, I got home yesterday, you would prefer to do it that way in simple present tense instead of I went home yesterday, because with the conjugations, it can get a little bit confusing, at least for Spanish. Keep it simple, and the future steps we're going to learn about the past and the future tenses. Now, why that amount of words? Well, it just follows the basic 80-20 principle, where 20% of the words that we use account 80% of our daily usage. So you're a lot more likely to use a word like mom or dad than, I don't know, a word like bottleneck, right? So I'll link in the description the 625 most common words as defined by Fluent Forever book. However, if you have a specific context that you want to learn, maybe you're more interested in cooking or surfing, or you have to worry about like Spanish or Mexican law, well, in that case, you want to learn and substitute the words for that specific context so that if you end up using that on a daily basis. Now we on to número tres, which is memorization systems. So how to memorize these words? So the best system I found is Anki cards, which is basically an intelligent flashcard system. So I'll dedicate a whole another video to this, but Anki cards for our context basically helps us memorize words for Spanish. And it's available both on Android, iPhone, and computers. And I'll put a link in the description, my favorite Anki course. It's by another YouTuber called Ali Abdal. And it's basically a 60-minute course, but I highly recommend checking it out because you basically can use it to learn any language, Spanish, Portuguese, or maybe you want to learn human anatomy or astrology or astronomy, something like that, where you have to memorize a lot of things. This tool is perfect for you. Now, the way I learn using Anki cards is basically the word that I want to remember. I put in a personalized sentence that I can relate with, that's related to my past or something that I'm interested in. I also try to connect it to an image and a sound, which is very easy to do with Anki. So here's an example of how I use Anki cards to remember a particular word. So here's an example of a word I'm trying to learn, which is right now, and I put into a Spanish sentence. So it reads, right now, está todo cerrado por pandemia. So the word I'm looking for in Spanish is ahorita. So now I know the word, so I'm gonna click show answer. Ahorita está todo cerrado por pandemia. So here I did a few things. One, I put the word into a context that's easier to remember because pandemic is very memorable. 2, I added an image, so visually it's easier to remember. And 3, I added a sound of my translation. So I'm using multiple senses and I'm adding the word into a context, so it's just a lot easier to remember. And I do this with all the words and phrases that I'm trying to learn. Now we're on to numero cuatro, which is basically practicing speaking. Now by this point you want to hire a Spanish tutor if you haven't done so already. On Upwork they're about $15 an hour at the moment, which I think is a good rate. Now if you're lazy, you could also go to a more organized service like MXU Bootcamp or baseland.com. Again, I'll link those in the description. Those are two that I've found so far that are good alternatives. In any case, whatever you pick, so practice speaking with a tutor or service of your choice. And also, you could also practice with speaking with locals. So there are services like italki.com. Again, I'll link that as well. But this is a very important step because if you don't practice speaking, if you just memorize the words, it's not going to be very useful in real life situations. Now, once I do this step in next month, I'll provide more resources and learnings in a future video. So if you haven't done so already, please like and subscribe. Numero 5, and this is the grammar part. So at this point, you've learned 500 to 1,000 words and you're practicing speaking with a tutor or some locals. And at this point, hopefully you're doing that 30 minutes to an hour a few times a week. At this point, it's time to learn different tenses and structures of a foreign language. So in Spanish, you have tenses like infinite, simple present, simple past, simple future, and so on. Now basically go over these with your tutor or service provider of choice, and they'll explain when to use what kind of tenses, what kind of verb conjugations, and so on. And in Spanish, you have other things like there's 2 ways to say to be or I am. So for example, ser, S-E-R, is for more inherent characteristics, and then you have estar, which is for more temporary characteristics. So I would say soy gringo, which is more inherent characteristic, which means like I'm a white boy, like probably not going to change. And estar is more temporary, so estoy enfermo, which is like I am sick. It's temporary because in a few days, probably not going to be sick. So at this point, you want to nail down these details so that you don't confuse the people you're talking with. So I've covered all the steps and now I want to share my personal timeline. So basically around August 23rd is when I started to practice consistently, and I'm trying to get to that goal of learning the 600 words. So I get to the next steps, which is basically having a conversation with my tutor and with locals on a daily basis. And the goal is to get to conversational Spanish by the end of October, which is when I plan to go to Mexico City or somewhere else in Latin America, which is a high mark, but I'm up to the challenge. And if I don't succeed, well, then you control me for the rest of my life. I will document my progress here, so please like and subscribe. Now, if you've been watching my channel up until now, a lot of it has been about tech. But increasingly, I'll be documenting what I'm currently doing with my free time or in the near future, which is learning Spanish, being a digital nomad, and personal development as it relates to that, and anything else that comes to mind. So thank you for listening, and have a great day. See ya.